Hi, welcome back and Happy New Year. Like all New Year's, you're going to face some new challenges in 2024. One of them is detailed on the whiteboard behind me. It's called validated boot, and the critical component of it is referred to as the signing infrastructure. And we're going to do what we can to bring you up to speed on that as quickly as we can in 3 separate webcasts. The first one, which we're doing today, is essentially an overview. Talks about what it is, why it is, what you have to do to conform with it, and then we'll give you some suggestions on different ways in which you can actually build the signing infrastructure itself. So give me a second here and I'll share my screen with you and we'll go ahead and get started. So the question is, what is it? Well, validated boot is essentially an extension of the Zero Trust system architecture that my colleague Glenn Bagsby speaks about when he defines things like policy decision points, policy enforcement points, as they apply to textual components like parmlib and proclib. This, on the other hand, deals with operating system components, non-textual things like IPL text, um, other load modules that you might find in LPA lib or in the nucleus, things like that. The genesis of it is that there is concern that there is a potential for vulnerability in the build and maintenance process of the operating system itself. And this is best exemplified by an attack that occurred against the software bill of material of an organization called SolarWinds in 2020. It injected a virus called Log4j that caused people to essentially panic around the world because thousands and thousands of organizations were impacted by it. So there's significance here. It's just not something that is on our minds every day, but it is potentially something that can happen. And I applaud IBM for placing this functionality within the ZOS environment. So what do you have to do to create the IPL resources that are necessary for the creation of validated boot? Well, the best definitions of the signing infrastructure that I've been able to find begin with Kevin McKenzie, who is the boot architect for validated boot, who wrote a white paper that you have a link to here. There are other details behind that white paper that deal with more explanatory information about the RACF profiles and permits, and additional information about the facilities class IRR profile, and a link to one example of how such infrastructure and such a program might be required for organizations, in this case in Europe. This is called DORA, which is a Digital Operational Resiliency Act, that essentially positions its recommendations directly in the path of the operating system and the use of validated boot and the signing infrastructure to protect them, essentially to identify not only vulnerabilities, but also changes that might be taking place in the operating system itself. The real detail behind the signing infrastructure itself was on the whiteboard that you now see before you, can be essentially broken down into 2 basic domains of activity. On the left-hand side, we see a diagram of what is often referred to as the clean room. This is the place where the signing infrastructure will be applied to the individual components that are received from IBM that are groomed into the state of the operating system that you want to implement in your organization. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to create that signing infrastructure. And that's going to mean that you'll have to create a key ring, you'll have to give it some permits, you'll have to give it some profiles, you'll have to create some certificates. I recommend two. And then you're going to have to assign individuals in the clean room to actually go through the signing process. Now, by definition, the clean room is supposed to be a very limited system environment, totally isolated from the sandbox, the development, production, with limited, very limited access to it. Again, it's part of the zero trust type architecture that applies to textual components. So you want to just have a few people permitted to be signers and to use the clean room itself. Once resources are signed, they're transferred by pack-to-pack copy to the right-hand side of the diagram, where we have a hex that will ultimately apply a certificate, the signed certificate's public key, to the individual LPARs to validate that the resources have been appropriately signed as they are IPL through a new IPL process, which is referred to as a list-directed IPL. So there's a lot of detail here. We're going to get more into that when we explain the various tools that can be used to implement the signing infrastructure itself. Of course, doing this could be done in the legacy TSO-ISPF environment using the discrete tool set that's available to you via RACD-Cert. You can build a ring, you can generate a certificate, you can generate a request, you can connect those requested certificates to the key ring. You can do all kinds of things, but these are individual discrete activities that also will need to be supported by individual discrete activities to build profiles and to permit individuals to them. And then, of course, there's always the issue associated with maintaining the key rings and the certificates and the profiles themselves, and being able to easily identify them in the collection of all the key rings and all the certificates that might be in the RACF data store. Another way to do this is to use a tool that New Era makes available to its image focus and control editor users that's referred to as ValBoot. Now, ValBoot is a single tool with a single interface that integrates all the things I just discussed, creating a ring, creating a certificate, defining the profiles, permitting the profiles. All of that is integrated into one, along with a substantial amount of key ring and certificate and profile management behind it. So this is a kind of great tool for doing that. Can be executed from our from a TSO ISPF environment with no problem, or from our VTAM application, again, with no problem. But there's also another tool that we make available, which is referred to as ICE Direct. Now, this tool we call Certificate Intelligence, and this is a complete certificate management environment that has an aspect of it that is groomed specifically for supporting validation of the signing infrastructure, but also can do things like generate multi-SAN certificates, as an example, or disaggregating bundles of certificates that you might have received from a CA. A number of different functions, and we're going to cover all of that in our third webcast. So if this is of interest to you, send an email to Sammy, and she will send along a copy of this presentation that'll allow you to simply click on the links that I showed about the references, and she'll put you on a list to notify you when the subsequent webcasts are available for ValBoot on TSO and ValBoot on ICE Direct. Again, Happy New Year. I hope to see you again soon.